Hello, everybody. My name is Sinan Kassim, and I'm joined today by Congressman Ted Deutch. Congressman Ted Deutch represents Florida's 22nd district, home to communities in northern Broward County and southeastern Palm Beach County. He's now serving in his sixth term in Congress. He's the chairman of the House Ethics Committee and a senior member of the House Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committee. This morning, Congressman Deutch has been selected to be a part of the White House Economic Recovery Panel. Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Glad to be with you, Sinan. Thanks.
Congressman, how are you and your family doing in this new age of social distancing and self-quarantine?
We're doing okay, thanks. And I hope everyone who's watching is staying safe and staying healthy. It's obviously a really challenging time for everyone and really unprecedented what we're being asked to do in order to help keep our community safe, and especially to help our heroes on the front lines, our doctors and nurses and emergency workers who are doing so much to help fight this awful pandemic.
Representative, you're absolutely right. And you've been doing some work in the Congress to keep us safe. You introduced the Ensuring Quality Access to Legal Defense Act with California Senator Kamala Harris. How will this legislation benefit American families, and how quickly do you feel that it can pass the House?
Well, I appreciate your asking. We've been focused in Congress on providing assistance to people who have been so negatively impacted by this terrible moment that we're in. That starts with providing an economic lifeline. That's what the CARES Act did. That's legislation that will help people who have lost their jobs get unemployment. That's, in this instance, for the first time, that'll apply to independent contractors and gig workers, people like Uber drivers, musicians, people who wouldn't otherwise qualify for unemployment. We want to make sure they can get help. We want to make sure our small businesses can get help. And then even as we're doing that, we're looking for ways to make sure that everything within our system works the way it's supposed to. So this is a piece of legislation that Senator Harris and I are working on to make sure that there's adequate funding for public defenders in our system, because even as our judicial system continues to work, we want to make sure that everyone has the ability to be represented by counsel, so they have that constitutional right protected. That's what that piece of legislation does.
Congressman, you've also been pushing the United States Department of Education to disperse $7 billion through the CARE Act for college students. Have you received a response from the Department of Education? And is the CARE Act an effective piece of legislation in your eyes?
Well, the CARES Act does a lot to try, as I said, to try to address the difficult economic moment that we're in, the challenges that so many people face. The fact is that for college kids who are claimed as dependents by their parents, so that's kids over the age of 17 who are in college, many of whom are facing really tough times themselves, they don't qualify for the direct payment that the CARES Act provides. So it does include $14 billion to help institutions of higher education, and half of that, $7 billion, is specifically set aside to help students with their emergency needs. So the Department of Education, I'm happy to report, has sent out the over 90% of that $7 billion to universities. Now what we're doing is really pressing to make sure that those universities are getting that money out to the students who really need it. Students who have lots of debt, who have lost the opportunity to live on campus, may not have a place to live, or having a hard time making sure that they're able to eat. We've encouraged people, if you need the help from your college, reach out to your college. Right now, there's money available, or if you have a loved one that you know is having a tough time, a college student, encourage them to reach out to their college or university, again, to take advantage of that money that's there. And it's there for the sole purpose of meeting their needs, the real emergency needs that they have right now.
Congressman Deutch, with your insight in the halls of Congress, do you see in the near future what kind of more measures that you see will be passed in Congress, and do they address the needs of the American people?
Well, that's got to be the driving force. Everything we do needs to help the American people as a whole. And so, as we're looking at what more we can do, we need to increase the amount of loans that are available. We need to make sure that not only is there more money for unemployment, and the federal government through the CARES Act, Congress has increased the amount that will go to people who are unemployed, but we need to make sure that they can actually access those benefits. And right now in Florida, it's too hard for people to use the system to get the benefits that they're entitled to. So we're really pushing, we're trying to get the governor to pull out all the stops, contact every tech company there is, do everything possible to make the process work better for unemployed Floridians. And then going forward, we want to make sure that there are enough resources available for our hospitals to help the doctors and nurses and others who are taking care of those who have become sick from this illness, from this virus. And we want to make sure that we're taking care of the first responders who are on the front lines in dealing with people who have gotten sick. That's the focus right now. And my hope is that we'll be able to do more over the next week or so.
Representative, you have also been a fierce proponent of ensuring that nonviolent elderly offenders would be released early to home detention. Has there been any progress on legislation concerning this?
There has been. Congress passed the First Step Act, which is a first important step on criminal justice reform, and we've also moved forward now on ensuring that senior nonviolent offenders have the ability that they get credit for time served, so that they have the opportunity to return home if they're older and pose no threat and have served time in prison. This is all part of a larger need for us to really tackle the issue of criminal justice reform, and there is a whole lot more to do. Whether it's we focused some on sentencing reform, but we also need to focus on people leaving prison and making sure that that's done right. And in Florida, remember, we passed a constitutional amendment to make sure that those who were convicted felons who served their time in prison, they were assessed a penalty, they served their time, they should get their constitutional rights back when they leave prison. Their right to vote is critical, and there's a constitutional amendment that provided for that. That's what the people of Florida wanted. The governor and legislature have tried hard to make that more difficult, so we're working to make sure that the will of the people is carried out.
Congressman Deutch, you had also written a letter to the United States Department of Health and Human Services urging more coronavirus testing supplies. In your eyes, does the state of Florida have the resources to prevent the coronavirus effectively? And did you ever receive a response from the department?
Well, we've had conversations with the department. We didn't get a formal response to that letter, but we have had conversations, and we've also been in regular contact with the Department of Emergency Management in Florida. The director, Jared Moskowitz, is from South Florida. We've worked closely with him. He's doing an outstanding job, and we want to make sure that there's an adequate supply of tests, also the swabs that are necessary to conduct the tests, and then especially the personal protective equipment that's used to protect people in hospitals and firefighters and police officers and those who are on the front lines of this battle. It's getting better, but I've been focused this week especially on making sure that all of the new equipment that's coming in from Asia through the Federal Emergency Management Agency winds up going where it's supposed to, so that our hospitals get what they need and our counties get what they need. We want to keep everyone safe who does this important work. That's going to allow them to test more people. And only by testing are we going to really know what's going to be necessary to help restart our economy and move out of the stay-at-home order.
Congressman Deutch, you have also urged, along with both Florida senators and many congressmen, the U.S. Department of Agriculture to send much needed relief for Florida's agricultural industry. Do you see this relief getting to this essential industry to Florida and across the country anytime soon?
I do. I'm actually hopeful that, and I'm confident that the administration now understands, my colleagues understand how important this industry is in Florida for farmers and the people they employ, but also in providing fresh produce, not just to those of us who live in Florida, but to people all around the country. So I think they're going to get assistance. We've also worked hard, and Commissioner Nikki Fried, the agriculture commissioner in Florida, has done an outstanding job in working to find ways to help the farmers get their produce out and make it available to people right now. There's only so much that can go to food banks because they have capacity issues. So we're trying to find ways for people to get produce directly from farmers, and for the farmers to be able to process the produce, to freeze it so that it can be used later by food banks to help people who really need that food. And there's been progress on all of those, I'm happy to say.
Congressman, you represent District 22, and Port Everglades falls under your jurisdiction. And as you know, a ship carrying 77 people showing influenza-like illness symptoms would like to dock at Port Everglades. And in a statement by Holland America, there are 1,243 guests and 586 crew. Of those, 30 guests and 47 crew members are showing symptoms. They wanted to dock in Port Everglades, and you have said that the cruise ship should not disembark for the safety of our communities. Can you tell us what the situation is now and what the solution will be in the near future?
Well, for the ship that did dock, I didn't say it shouldn't dock. What I said, and I think it's critical, and I think everyone would agree, you can have a response that is both humanitarian, that recognizes that there were people on the ship some from our own communities, some from other places in America, and some from countries around the world. Those individuals need to be able to get home, and so there is a way to do it that recognizes that, but that also recognizes that we don't want to do anything that's going to risk the health of the people who live in Broward County and all throughout South Florida, in Dade County and in Palm Beach County. So I worked closely with the Coast Guard, and I was in regular contact with the county officials. And ultimately, the plan that they came up with was one that permitted people to leave the ship, that limited the impact on our healthcare system so that we could continue to take care of the people from our own community who are sick, but that also got people onto planes without going through our airports, got them onto planes back to their own communities. Everything that we do as we're battling this virus has to be premised on listening to the public health officials to do things in a way that will keep people safe and that won't cause this terrible virus to spread even further.
And Congressman, we appreciate your humanitarian leadership on this issue as well. Congressman, I want to turn to more electoral issues. As you know, Wisconsin held their primary voting on April 7th. Do you know if Congress is planning on passing legislation to protect voters in fulfilling our democratic responsibility while still staying safe? And do you have any provisions in mind that should be put in place?
Well, it's a really important question with an election, national presidential election right around the corner in November. We have to have the election in November. We also have an obligation to conduct the election in a way that's going to make sure that everyone is safe. So there are states right now that vote entirely by mail. And the hope was in the CARES Act that we might be able to do more to provide ways for that to happen around the country. We couldn't include, we wound up being unable to include everything that we wanted. But in Florida, where we have the ability to vote by mail, and in Broward County, where everyone is now going to have access to a ballot, and hopefully in Palm Beach County, the same thing will happen. And I would like to see across Florida, everyone be sent a vote by mail ballot, so that if if come November it's safe to go out and vote, certainly you can take your vote by mail ballot to a polling place. You can turn it in there. But if it's not, I don't want to put people at risk like we saw in Wisconsin by making people stand in line in the midst of a pandemic when there are other safer ways that will allow people to vote, that will allow it to be done safely and without the threat of fraud. That's what we ought to be looking at as we head toward the November election.
Congressman, I really do appreciate you joining me today and offering your insight, your advice, and words of encouragement. What are your final words of advice and encouragement to our state of Florida, to District 22, and to the United States of America?
Well, thanks. And thanks for having me. This is, as we've been talking about, this is not only a hard time for, I think it's safe to say for everyone, this is an unprecedented moment. No one's ever lived through anything like this before in our lifetime. And what's been so uplifting is, even with these enormous challenges that we're facing, the way that people have come together to pitch in, to help our doctors and nurses, to collect masks, to make masks at home to be used, to make sure that our food banks are full so that people who are in need can have access to food. All of the ways that we're leaning on one another and being there for one another is really inspiring. And we're not through this yet, but I'm absolutely confident, based on what we've seen so far, that with the heroic efforts of our frontline workers and the way that our community has really pitched in to help one another, we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it together. And when we do, there is this, I think, new realization of just how much we can do together that I hope will continue even after this terrible moment has passed.
Congressman Deutch, thanks so much for joining me today. It's been an honor having a conversation with you, and we appreciate your words of bringing us together and getting through this tough moment in history. Thanks again, Congressman.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you're doing in conducting these interviews and giving people the opportunity to come together at this moment. Thanks.
Thank you, Congressman. Take care.
You too.